Breaking news, and we mean news that really changes the narrative here. Ukraine has delivered a stunning surprise to Russia in Kupiansk. This is all coming across our desks as of December 22, 2025, and what we're looking at is a massive calculated defeat for Moscow, both tactical and informational. We're going to get right into it. But first, if you're one of the many listeners who supports Ukraine and, appreciates getting this kind of immediate, deep analysis, please do us a quick favor. Subscribe to Defense Reports. It's your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex. Join me with Arya for the latest deep dive by Defense Report. We do sharp, no-nonsense breakdowns of global defense news, military tech, and strategy. And today we are covering what might be the most incredible operational surprise of late 2025.
It really is. I mean, this was a counter-operation that was months in the making. It was hidden completely by silence and then executed with just astonishing precision.
So let's set the stage. Russia saw Kupiansk as a huge prize, right?
Oh, absolutely. For them, the initial plan was to make it a symbol of their success. An unassailable bridgehead they could use to push deeper into northern Kharkiv.
And they were pouring forces in, thinking they were locking it down.
Exactly. They thought they were solidifying gains. But what's so fascinating here is that the Ukrainian command, under Colonel Serhiy Sidorin, used the quietness of their own operations to lure the enemy into
Get it, you have to understand the risk involved. What was the strategic picture back in autumn 2025? Why was Kupiansk such a flashpoint?
Well, Russia was determined to encircle the city. The reason was to solidify control over this vital railway hub just to the south and put immense pressure on the northern parts of Kharkiv Oblast.
And Kupiansk sits right on the Oskol River, so control of the bank is everything.
It's everything. It controls all movement in the region. So this wasn't just, local aggression. This was logistical warfare. By late autumn, they'd captured nearby settlements like Kindrashivka and Radkivka.
And those weren't just random villages.
No, not at all. They were essential pieces of the puzzle. They were meant to establish an outer defensive ring and, crucially, to block all of Ukraine's main ground lines of communication, their GLOCs.
Cutting off supplies, reinforcements, everything.
That's the exact picture Ukrainian command was facing. The threat of being encircled was real, it was imminent, so the decision was made to launch a preemptive counter-operation.
Instead of waiting to have to fight their way out.
Exactly. The goal was crystal clear. Liberate those settlements Russia had just taken and push their forces all the way back to the Oskol River, denying them any stable ground on the West Bank.
We're talking about a big integrated operation. I'm seeing the Kharkiv National Guard, the 92nd Assault Brigade, soldiers from the International Legion.
A lot of highly motivated units, but what's so interesting is that none of the sources we're seeing credit the victory to just having more firepower.
They credit it to something else.
Something far more valuable. Operational silence.
And that's the key takeaway from Colonel Sidorin's own assessment.
It's the single most critical factor. Strict information silence. It was the only thing that allowed the deception to work, that prevented Russian commanders from realizing how exposed they were until the trap was already sprung.
Maintaining silence like that now, with social media, constant satellite feeds, it's incredibly difficult. This wasn't just about radio discipline, was it?
Oh, not at all. It requires a total media blackout, intense internal command discipline, no premature reports, no celebratory still concentrated in the city center.
Not in bunkers, though.
No, they're barricaded in high-rise apartment buildings, standalone structures. They're even in the central hospital, which, complicates things immensely. But strategically, they are totally cut off. No supplies, no reliable comms, and certainly no way out.
I still can't get over that. A gas pipeline.
A massive one running north of Kupiansk and conveniently right under the river. They essentially turned a piece of civilian energy infrastructure into a military tunnel.
That's an incredible feat, but it sounds like an absolute nightmare for the soldiers inside. How long a journey are we talking about?
It was an ordeal. We're talking about a covert crossing of roughly 5 kilometers. This wasn't fast. It could take a soldier up to 4 days to move through those confined dark spaces, carrying limited gear.
4 days underground.
Just to reach the forests on the other side and build up their forces. This covert GLOC is what allowed entire regiments to get a foothold on the West Bank without the usual signs of a crossing, like pontoon bridges.
So if Ukrainian forces knew about this pipeline, why not just bomb it immediately?
That's the instinctive response, right? And they tried, but it wasn't effective. The network is just too long, too complex. If you blow up one part, they can bypass the damaged section and just surface somewhere else.
So they needed a different strategy.
A much more strategic one. They called it containment and accumulation.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means instead of just trying to destroy the pipeline, units like the Kharkiv search and strike team focused on identifying every single exit point.
So they mapped the whole thing.
They mapped it, and then they placed every exit under continuous concealed fire control and surveillance. They were essentially letting Russian groups enter the pipeline, knowing full well they couldn't get out at the other end without being immediately engaged.
That's brilliant. They weren't fighting the tunnel, they were waiting for the soldiers coming out of it.
Exactly. They waited until the optimal moment, and the final blow came during the counteroffensive's last phase. Combat engineers used a huge amount of explosives, something like 3 tons.
3 tons.
To permanently collapse the pipeline infrastructure. They didn't just that were barricaded in residential buildings and the hospital. It allows for precise strikes without sending soldiers into deadly close quarters battles.
But the sources also say that this area was technologically contested. It wasn't a free-for-all for Ukrainian drones.
No, that's the reality of this war now. Even with the tactical advantage, the sheer density of enemy FPV drones made Ukrainian logistics, medevac, and even unit rotation incredibly complicated. Every single movement becomes a challenge.
And we can't forget the civilian cost here. There's a brutal human element to all of this.
Yes, the reports are sobering. There's one about a civilian man in Kupiansk who stepped on a pedal mine, a PFM-1, while he was trying to flee from Russian drones.
And he couldn't get help.
He couldn't be evacuated for a month. A whole month. Medics said he eventually just waited out the injury and walked out of the city with his mother. It just underscores the horrific conditions for the civilians caught in the middle of this.
And this moment, the successful encirclement, it wasn't just a military win. It was a direct, undeniable blow to Moscow's propaganda machine.
The timing was either perfect for Ukraine or, terrible for the Kremlin. Just days before the encirclement was complete, on December 19th, Putin holds his annual direct line press conference.
And he claimed to a global audience that Russian forces had already taken Kupiansk several weeks ago.
He did. And he insisted any Ukrainian counterattacks had failed completely. He was broadcasting a fabricated reality.
While at that very moment, Ukrainian forces were mopping up the city.
Exactly, and the truth had already been visually proven a week earlier.
Let's talk about that. President Zelensky's visit to the Kupiansk entrance sign on December 12th. That was a huge statement.
It was a calculated, very high-risk move. He stood just over a kilometer from active Russian positions to deliver that video address. The message was for one audience, Ukraine's European and U.S. partners.
And the message was,
Putin is lying about what's happening on the front line. It was undeniable, high-profile proof of Ukrainian control.
and Putin's reaction was just immediate denial.
Of course, he tried to discredit the footage, claimed it was fake because the density of drones success like Kupiansk really strengthened Ukraine's position against what was, a pretty unfavorable framework.
And a framework Russia had basically rejected anyway.
Right. Russia had already refused the most basic parts. No genuine ceasefires, no referendums, no real demilitarized zones.
So by proving they can still win these complex fights, Kyiv can push back on any pressure to concede territory from a position of perceived weakness.
Precisely. It shows European leaders in real time that their support is going to competent forces who can win. It completely undermines Russia's narrative of inevitable victory and justifies sustained, massive financial backing.
Speaking of that backing, what concrete steps has Europe taken recently? We're seeing some huge numbers.
The EU has shown a really deep, long-term commitment here. In response to Russia's maximalist demands, which haven't changed, Europe moved on two major fronts.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, they agreed to indefinitely freeze $210 billion of Russian state assets. That's about $247 billion. They used Article 122 of the EU treaty to do it, and the indefinite part is a huge signal of long-term punitive intent.
And that sets the stage for future reparations. But there was also direct aid committed, right?
Absolutely. The EU simultaneously agreed to provide Ukraine with a massive good coordination and real technological innovation, especially with drones and counter-engineering, can overcome superior numbers. It turned Russia's loudest propaganda into a verifiable and frankly humiliating battlefield defeat.
We spent a lot of time analyzing how Russia desperately turned to an underground gas pipeline to get into Kupiansk.